Hello, everybody, and welcome. We have with us Alex Almastica, who is one of our wonderful librarians and is very knowledgeable in AI. And she is going to talk to us today and answer all your questions that you have. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you, Jana. So today's topic is really interesting. The title for today is "Write, Don't Cheat: Ethical Use of AI in Academia." So I'm gonna go through the presentation. There is a little survey that I want you to complete because we're gonna use that uh, to see what's going on. So I'm gonna drop that in the chat. It is anonymous, so it won't record. You shouldn't be able to or need to log in there to answer those questions. And then I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to go through our conversation about writing and not using AI just to get the content generated. Okay, let me see. Okay, we're here. So I'm dropping that sheet link in the chat. Make sure that you click on it. So welcome everybody. Like I said, Alex, Almestiga, right from Northwest College. I work out of the A-Leaf Library. If you're ever around, please come by and we can sit down for a little while and talk. And if you have any questions, please bring them. I'll be happy to assist you with that. So this topic of it's really interesting because when you talk about writing and AI, it can be very challenging, right? In terms of what's happening, and we'll go through. And please feel free to ask any questions. So I'm gonna give you like an overview of how to maybe understand this landscape from a lot of different perspectives. And I always start like grounding our experiences in defining exactly what we're doing, and then talking about a little bit about ethics and some things that you need to be aware of in terms of pitfalls and responsible practices. So if you haven't completed the survey yet, on the screen I have a QR code for it, and this is what you are going to be seeing on your end. So I'm asking two questions. Are you using AI to write? And then I'm also asking, what do you think about using AI to write? So let's take a couple of minutes to do that. And I'm gonna because I have. Oh, there we go. You guys are fast. So, according to our three champion students, right? Two of you are not using it, and one of you have used it, right? We have somebody else that joined us. I'm gonna drop this in the chat for you. Click on that link and complete that survey. So some of the responses that I have, I've seen that you guys are using it for sure for checking grammatical mistakes. That's excellent. I and then I don't think much of it, but oh, we got another response. Thank you so much. Let's see how this changed. Nope. And so out of the students in chat, the majority of you are not using it to write. I don't think much of it at all, but I say if you're using it correctly for helping yourself, it's very useful. That is correct. Using AI to write can be considered as plagiarism. Yes, bravo, well said. I think it's okay if you're not allowing to dictate your writing. Absolutely. Okay, hold on. You guys, uh, stop. What? Bravo. That's exactly the way to approach it. You can commit plagiarism if you use AI without authorization. Also, if you don't cite it, right? And in addition, um, having your own thoughts, and I'm working a lot with the concept of sovereign thinking. You are the master of your brain. So I'm gonna go through some content in which I'm gonna briefly discuss some things that you need to be aware of. But I wanna congratulate you for your approaches and the way that you're thinking about this. So this is telling me that you guys are not necessarily super beginners, like novice, So I'm seeing that you have some type of knowledge here, right? So keep on developing like your knowledge independently by attending HCC events like this, and also talking to your faculty about, their policies in regards to the use of AI, and also like being aware yourselves of how is it that AI is being integrated into some of your tools, because it's seamlessly coming into some things, and you may be exposed to AI in ways in which you are not aware. Um, Let me go back to my screen. So thank you so much. We have another response. Co- Perfect. That's the thing. Somebody's using it to to phrase emails, work emails correctly. And I believe that your ability to use AI, or generative AI, for correcting your grammar is going to be significant. So later we're going to talk a little bit about that. This is a slide that I have that has just the link to this. So when we talk about artificial intelligence, what are we talking about? We're talking pretty much about computer systems, okay? Something that simulates some of the human cognitive knowledges, but remember, these are computers. So there's no biological material there yet, right? In the future, we might see something like that, but the future, I mean, it's progressing, but we're not there today. We are not at what they call the singularity, when AI is going to gain consciousness, or in a moment when AI is already integrated with, let's say, the human body. And some people, when they talk about that, they talk about transhumanism. So that's a very interesting topic, but we're not there yet. All right. In terms of what mostly we're talking about large language models, which are these systems that use a lot of data to generate language that seems to be coming from a human. And so you see some people talking about large language models, and others talking about systems like generative AI. Now, when we talk about generative AI, also, we are talking about systems that allow you to create other things that are not text. And now we're talking about music, images, code. So there's a lot of things that you can generate with AI, and the field keeps growing every day. Um, so when we're in this process, one thing that you need to consider is like the ethical approach to AI use and academic integrity. So what are we talking about? So when we talk about ethics, we talk about simply something that is either right or wrong, and there's scales to how bad or wrong something can be versus how correct it could be, right? There's certain nuance in that. Uh, but in this case with AI, you sometimes are going to see that it is portrayed, and it could be AI, large language models, or generative AI, as a tool that could be unethical in use if we don't approach it the correct way. Now, when we talk about academic integrity, what we're talking about is about the behaviors that we have as students and professionals that show that we are behaving ourselves in an honest way with our production, so that when we deliver our assignments, and then we participate in our classroom experiences, we are being true and representing ourselves and our thoughts, that we are not using crutches to masquerade certain things that we don't know how to do, or that we are in a quest to achieve the grade at all costs without actually going through the learning process. So it's very important for us to be careful of the way AI is being integrated, because as you guys mentioned, yes, you can commit plagiarism because the words are not your own, the material doesn't come from anywhere, right? Also, it's kind of like, it's almost like a ghost is writing because it's somebody else, it's not you. If you rely too much of AI for things, it actually can make your thinking a little bit less independent. So it can take you to a place where you become dependent on using the tool to do the thinking from you. And that is not okay, because one of the things that we need to practice is critical thinking in order to work with discerning. This is very important. Your capacity to discern and make judgments on things is very important. So don't surrender that to something that may sound correct produced by AI. All right. There's also the risk of bias amplification. That means that because we don't know what type of data is going into, the large language models or any of these models, we don't know. We know where it's coming from, but we don't know. We don't have specific details about it. We do run the risk of having a system that shows you results that have a certain kind of opinion. It's not that clear. Uh, how is it that that system is going to operate? But it is amplified by your own approach to the way that you prompt, and the type of language that you use. So uh, issue of bias, and also the bias inside the data, because the data could be reflecting information from sources in a certain way depending on what is there. It's pretty serious, and it's something that you need to be aware of. Okay. Um so when we are talking about AI, and the topic of ethical use, there are some limitations that AI have that you need to be aware of. And by now, you already heard a lot about the hallucinations, but also, there's fabrication and degradation. So sometimes the more you interact with AI, the more it seems like it's giving you outputs that are not necessarily correct. We found also errors in logic and errors in math calculations. There's also the issue with bias and stereotyping, and the loss of context. So sometimes when you drop information in AI, it doesn't really know what you are doing because you don't give enough context. So that is something that we address in the prompting workshop, and we probably want to have to do that again. Another thing that it's limiting for AI is that it doesn't necessarily have the latest. It just simply doesn't. And that's something that is really particular about it. And then one thing that I learned this week also is about syncopathic responses, and that is when the AI likes to give you responses that are in alignment, like more positive. That's how the language is going to feel than it actually should. So, it has a lot to do with the way that you interact with. So when you are interacting with different large language models, depending on which one you're using, I use ChatGPT for the most, but I'm starting also to use others. I have access to Gemini, and there's others that I'm going to share with you today that I really need for research. One thing that I want you to know is that depending on your interactions, the GPT may be feeding on its memory. Oh, yes. So I have Jana is saying that her sister has GPT nicknames and that. So in ChatGPT also there is a feature that, for example, you could be running your prompts and then you're gonna get questions, but you can make projects. And if you make projects, you can assign to those projects certain conditions and constraints to operate. So I have different projects with different names. So it's really important for you to be aware of that, because if you are just using an element, and usually I haven't seen this with images yet, like for example, using Midjourney or using Adobe Firefly, but in DALI, DALI is going to have access to inside ChatGPT to its memory. So um, keep that in mind if you need to interact with the AI, because it could bring data from previous questions that you've prompted it for, and that could impact the output. Okay, so this level of awareness is important for you to have. Um, how are we doing, guys? Do you guys have a question? Anything in particular at this time? Gonna take a moment.
Mila, did you have something? It looked like you were about to type. And y'all can unmute here. So
No, unfortunately, I couldn't think of a question. You answered everything really well. But yeah.
What question was it?
Oh, I didn't have a question. I just couldn't think of anything because you answered everything really well.
Okay, thank you so much. All right. So I'm gonna share my screen again. Oh, I see Aaron too. He's typing something. Welcome, welcome. If you've just arrived, we appreciate you coming today. Oh, that's a great point. Aaron is mentioning that you using each other's names or giving the chat GPT a name is a way of acknowledging, and that is correct, right? So you've seen movies around that address that, like Her, right, or any of the other robot movies. So it's very interesting to see that, and I could see a future in which um in which AI interacts with us in ways that are pretty surprising because the developments are pretty fast. Okay, let me go back to sharing my screen. Okay. So remember, there's some limitations that we cover, and if I'm going to share this presentation with you further down, I have a link that is coming from Psychology Today that has to do with psychosis generated by GPT and therapy, and I want to make a disclaimer here. Please do not disclose your name to the GPTs. Do not disclose personal information. Do not seek medical advice or, psychological advice. Seek the support of a life professional. If this is something that you don't know how to achieve, please visit ACC and talk to your counselors, talk to the advisors, talk to librarians, talk to your tutors, talk to your professors, okay? Seek that human interaction so that we can guide you into the process. Be very careful about using any of these systems for advice. It's dangerous because we are worried. We are very worried about the misuse of AI, and this is a text heavy slide, but these are things that you should be aware of. As educators, we worry about the integrity of how we can assess your work, right? We worry about how are we building your skills, and there is a layer that has to do with the credentialing that HCC is going to give you, okay? So when we as educators, or when we're working with you, we're going through a process in which we are trying to give you a learning and provide a learning experience that allows you to develop yourself in the way that you want to be developed, right? Because we have students that they want to go be dancers, engineers, accounting, HVAC, right? We have a lot of different people in a lot of different paths. So the only way that we can do that is by really knowing, that you are in a process of inquiry in which you are thinking and, taking knowledge. And this is pretty significant, in which you are taking knowledge and you're taking information and you're processing all of that, and then you are able to apply it, right? So when we are working with AI and we surrender the entire process, in whichever way, because there's a lot of ways of using AI to not do any work at all, then we cannot say that you're learning. And that is a big problem, right? And one thing that I want to respect and let's say honor is that at ACC, we are an urban college, you know, and our students work a lot. We have students working part-time, working full-time, working multiple jobs. Everybody, it's the nature of our dynamic is really, really busy. Uh, so you have to find ways in which you can create space for thinking, for doing your homework, for resting, for eating, for taking care of your family, of taking care of your friends. And sometimes that means that you don't have to take 6 classes. And also sometimes that means that perhaps you're going to be very mindful about the way that you're going to organize your schedule, because sometimes we have students that take 16-week classes, and then they take a 10-week class, and then they take an 8 and an 8, and by the end of the semester the academic load is so high and everything gets complicated, and then we struggle a little bit, right? And then that's when now with these tools, you might be tempted to go use one of those tools to use your academic, to be successful in your academic endeavors, right? So my recommendation is that I'd rather you pace yourself in a way that is healthy instead of trying to rush to achieve, because it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. You got to pace yourself. So these AI tools can help you do a lot of things better, but if you use it unethically and not in alignment with what the professor is saying, that's when we run into problems, okay? So please take good care of yourself. That's really important as you're going through your academic career. And at the bottom of this page, I have a little quote that's coming from the MIT project, uh, which is really interesting because I think they are the first entity to identify the impact that using AI has on the brain, which is that it reduces brain activity compared to moments in which the people that participated in the study were not using AI for the activity. So now there is evidence that there is an impact. Just like people, in the past have talked a lot about exposing children to social media or computer. It's the same. So there's a link here, and you're gonna get it in case you're interested in looking at that impact. So when we talk about institutional integrity, we're talking about our standards. We're saying that when we give you that credential, that you completed it with honesty, competence, and quality, right? So your degree has value because of the experience that you went through. What we expect is that you're gonna act with honor, honesty, and that you're gonna be responsible. And of course, if you there's a lot of different things that could happen in a semester that could lead you to different outcomes, but I could say that one of the things is that there are consequences, right, for violating academic integrity and committing plagiarism. It's plagiarism, collusion. It's a bunch of things that you could do as a student, right? Well, don't cheat. Don't do it. It's not worth it. And one thing that I think is super important for you is to seek your professor's guidance. And what I mean by that is that I want you to go talk to your instructors. When you have a moment, you should also be reading your syllabus and of course following with the course. But the moment when you engage your faculty and tell them, hey, professor, can I use AI? Can I not use it? To what extent can I use it? They're gonna tell you exactly how is it, because each professor at Houston City College is the entity inside the classroom that has the authority to tell you this is how we're gonna do it here, because that is their responsibility. Okay, so keep that in mind. Professors are responsible for conducting experiences that lead you to practice academic integrity. So when it comes to using AI, one thing that I noticed, and you want to be very mindful of, especially um, if you correct your language with AI, is this: large language models turn to flatten communication. That means that and depending when you prompt, this can happen too. When you feed, let's say you want an output because you are correcting your words, right? And you wrote a paragraph and you type something like, please fix this paragraph, right? When you do something like that, who knows what the AI is going to do? It's going to do its mathematical magic with the algorithm, and it's going to give you an output. That's a very simple prompt, but it's not necessarily the best way of approaching it, okay? You can enrich the process by asking the system, for example, fix the grammar only, do not make any changes in my syntax. The reason why I mentioned that is because we want to hear your voice. And of course, not only your vocal cords, but your voice as expressed in your projects. So that is really important because everybody has a unique flavor of, thinking, of producing and creating. So when you actually, if you want to check your grammar and you tell the AI, do not change my syntax, respect my tone, right? Only check for grammar, you're putting constraints. And that idea of putting the constraint in the system keeps the AI in a certain alignment. Did that make sense? Let me know in the chat. Because there is a significant difference in the way the LLMs are going to work depending on the instructions and constraints you give them. Okay. And then at the same time, if you want to tell the LLM, make this a little bit more funny, or, you could do that too. So one thing that I want you to do is experiment as you're trying these things. Okay. Let me see what can we, yep. Thank you, Phyllis. Thank you, Anthony. Thanks, Aaron. Remember, look at what Camila is saying. Oh my goodness. She's sharing that when she uses Grammarly, she screenshots because it refreshes, right? And then she has her evidence that she didn't plagiarize. There you go. That's a great strategy. And also, if you want to write your originals in a word processor, right? Or if you want to handwrite, but I don't recommend anybody handwrite at this point. It's a lot sometimes, but it works. That's a great way of doing it. Because also, not only are you practicing academic integrity, right? You are defending your integrity. Because sometimes, it could be that somebody thinks that you didn't do the work and you have done the work, and then you need evidence. We see Sharon and Camila are also typing. I will wait. Here you go. I'm gonna pull my window out so I can pay attention to the chat. Okay. Yes, that's happening. See, that's what I'm afraid of. That sometimes you're going to be accused of using AI when you didn't. So I'm sorry that happened. And try as much as you can to um take your to make sure that you're documenting your creative process. Yeah, I mean, okay, this is where I'm glad that Camila is mentioning, like, that differentiating human work from what is being produced by AI. Look, at some point, you're gonna find that the best way of identifying when somebody makes the work is when you talk to them about the topic. And depending on what it is, that human engagement is going to be really, really important, because AI is advancing at to such a speed that the level of the output and the quality is pretty difficult to distinguish. But maybe for everyday use, you could see that could become like, okay, a minor point. But this is the thing. At this point, if you guys are using your phones and your browsers, I know you've seen like how AI is being integrated. And sometimes I find incorrect answers in the browsers and on the phone that AI is providing. Okay. So in this session today, we're not doing the evaluation, but I think next week, is it? Yes. Next week we have the critique the bot evaluating AI generating content. That is where we're really gonna jump into. Okay, these are some of the things that you really need to be worried about in terms of the content that you're getting. So when if you are in this process, right, of using AI and trying it out, I highly recommend that you become very familiar with the sources of information in your field. Okay, I'm talking now. I treat going to school like this is professional development. Okay, so what I want you to do is go and make sure that you know what are the sources, the legitimate sources of information in my field. And I'm not talking just, oh, I'm gonna search for it for Google, or I'm gonna use AI to retrieve sources. Because when you understand the nature of the sources in your field, that's when you can really gain like a tool to evaluate what is presented against you. Okay. And that takes time. You can always talk to librarians, because one of the things that librarians specialize in is knowing, okay, let me go find the credible source in your field. And it could be an organization, it could be a book, it could be an article, it could be a reference source, right? So that you have data to evaluate whichever source or piece of information you need to evaluate. So that's one of the things that we're going to be covering next week. So thank you so much for responding on chat and sharing your thoughts. Because you guys are bringing some issues to the forefront that are really, really important. So when I was talking about your voice and grammar, these are things that I want you to always keep in mind, because they're going to be very responsive to your style. And you bring your own knowledge to the learning experiences that you have. And that is something that the AI won't be able to replicate. Okay. So, of course, I just gave you a little speech about the library. So in the context of ACC, you have Houston City College libraries, and you have plenty of librarians through the system that would love to help you find sources. But you also have your tutors, you have your professors. So there's a lot of people that are here to help you connect with sources that will allow you to learn more in a world that is dramatically changing in terms of how is it that we are processing information. Okay. So when we are talking about all of these topics and dwelling on not, on ethical behavior and writing, one thing that I want you to consider is, and you don't need to answer this right now, but this is a question that you should seek to answer at some point in your life. Is like, what is knowing to me? How do I know? Do I know because I read a book? Do I know because I had an experience? Do I know because I integrated both of those? Do I know because somebody told me that it's so? Where is this knowing? Where is this thing that we call knowing coming from? Right? From my perspective, knowing comes from the combination of acquiring knowledge, having experience, and then placing that knowledge into action through your interpretation. So some people see knowledge as something that happens outside of themselves, when knowledge could also be seen as an intrinsic thing that belongs to you. So understanding why you're reasoning, why you're writing the way you're writing, and how you deliver the effort of your intellect is something that we want to see. AI has nothing like that, but you as a human do. We can see the effort of your intellect. And one thing that I want to share with you, that I tell every student that I work with, is that as you're going through the professional development process in school, right, enrolling for classes and taking different courses, sometimes you are going to find that you are going to have to read a book or do an assignment or go through some type of learning experience that you're not going to feel comfortable with. You're gonna be like, oh my gosh, I can't do this work, or I'm tired, or I read it, I don't understand. Slow down And do know that sometimes that discomfort that you're feeling with learning is part of the learning process, and it's okay. It's not for you to be like, oh my gosh, I need to do better. Like, okay, just calm down. Sometimes I have students that come to me crying, oh my God, I'm failing, da, da, da. And I'm like, what's going on? And then I'm like, talk with them. What they are is anxious. So, work with your levels of anxiety in regards to academic work, and you will be successful in completing your classes. And if there's something happening, you can always seek support, like to push forward and be successful. But this question of how do I know will only come from the effort that you place in the process. So if you surrender your process to the AI, then we're just kind of like, that's unethical because we're not developing correctly. And it could be challenging you from you in the future, because one thing that is important about knowing is that what you're proving is that you're able to go through an intellectual process. Okay. And if you, let's say, use AI to generate content, to submit that as classwork, right? And you don't know what's going on there, that erodes your credibility. So now you go ahead and you apply that to other people. It erodes their credibility, okay? So I never want anybody to approach you like, well, we really can't believe you because you didn't write that. But somebody could say, well, I really appreciate you use AI to correct your grammar. Like, for example, that for emails today is pretty much it's standard. Although sometimes, I send an email and it might have a little mistake, and I'm like, it's okay, I'm still human. Uh, so keep those ideas in your mind as you're going through your own processes creating. Now, if you're using AI, what I'm displaying on the screen, it's a picture. I'm in grad school too, and I had to submit a paper. My papers are written in APA style. So I want you to look at the bottom of the screen right here. There is an artificial intelligence transparency statement in which I'm stating that I use Grammarly was used to correct syntax and grammar. So my professor, Dr. Lee, oh, she loves transparency statements because I am fortunate enough to be able to integrate AI into my schoolwork. And my professor, she even has her own AI assistant integrated in the class, but she told us place a transparency statement. So if your professor allows you to integrate AI, it is a good idea to have a transparency statement indicating what is the nature of the use of AI for your assignment. In addition, if you, let's say that you decide to conduct research and use AI, most certainly you have to disclose the use of AI and the nature of the use. How do you use it? To what extent? To what results? Okay. And another question that I'm asking in terms of, the practice of integrity with authorized uses of AI is how to cite it. So in this presentation, I have two examples of citing AI. So this one, I created this one with Gemini for both of them. And if you notice in the upper part, you have the reference list template, okay, for APA and for MLA. And at the bottom, you have it for the in-text citation. So what's interesting, this, if you're using Gemini, this is something that you can take to your own documents, okay? And then if you are using ChatGPT, it changes in terms of the elements of the citation. Okay, so you don't cite the same way in each of these; they're different. So keep that in mind in terms of if you are allowed to use AI, how you're gonna cite it. Okay, now so far when I talk to a lot of students, they are familiar with using, let's say, Gemini, Copilot, Perplexity, and Claude. Okay. Um, and that's where we are. If that's what you're familiar with, that's fine. I encourage you to seek more, to learn more about other types of AIs that are out there. Um, so on the screen, I have 4 different ones. I have TaskRabbit, I have Elicit, I have something that's called Consensus, and the last one, oh, I don't remember, starts with an S. We're gonna see it in a moment. So what I'm gonna show you are applications of artificial intelligence, but they are not large language models. It's a little bit different. So these help with research in case that's something that you want to use. Um, Let me share my screen. Okay. So, oh, the other one was Semantic Scholar. And this is something that's being used a lot, and I recommend that you explore it when you have a chance. Um, so in this case, if I have a question, and I'm using the free versions, so I can use Elicit to try to get some ideas for writing. And if you notice, as I'm getting results, right, it's like it's identified different sources that I can use. And you can try the same. I have a paper here that it has to do with lateral reading, which is something very interesting when we interact with content. And this one we are going to use consensus. Let me see. This one helps you find papers that are connected to each other. This one's more for scientific literature. Now I'm doing something that I have not tested before. I'm testing for what will happen if I throw dancing and generative AI. And if you notice, result number 2 has to do with human AI co-dancing, evolving cultural heritage through collaborative choreography, which is interesting. Um, and then in consensus, which one was, yeah, no, this one. In Research Rabbit, I'm gonna look for the same example in all subject areas. And this one's pretty cool in the way it organizes the results too. So you're gonna get different entries here about that are related. And then I want you to notice that these sometimes, for example, the years 2016, 2021, 2014, nothing here is going to be 2024. And that is something 2025, I meant to say, sorry. So there are different tools that would allow you to look for information in addition to what you can find in the library. So Oh no, now you know, Camila, and thanks, Felix, for mentioning this. This is why I'm mentioning bringing these four tools. I cannot demonstrate all of them in depth, but now you know, right? You got this field, artificial intelligence, right? And then you got the big players. Who are the big players? ChatGPT, Copilot, Grok. What's the other one? Perplexity, Gemini. So you have the big companies that have the your models that are that can generate content. But now what you're seeing is that there are other companies that are a little bit more in a niche. So all of these, they're not writing papers for you. That's a lot of AI. Oh yeah, no, it's crazy. If you want to, I can show you a graphic that I have on my computer so that you see how crazy is. Okay, so this graphic is from McCandless. He's an expert in visualization of data. Okay, so this is all the major large language models, right, ranked by capabilities and different parameters from the training. So you can see like in 2022 right here, ChatGPT 3, right? And then now this is where we are, and it's overwhelming, right? So if you ask me, like, there are tools out there for only for AI discovery, okay? Uh and you just have to, depending on what you're doing, you just have to keep up with it. But you saw me use some artificial intelligence tools that were not writing for me. And in the library, we are seeing similar integration inside the library databases. But the difference is that the AI, the data sets do not have the depth of coverage that the library has in terms of materials, because it's only covering the web, and not the libraries databases are not available. Like the data set of the library is not available on the web. That is closed. Okay, so I always want you to remember that point, because for example, depending on what you're doing, if you only rely on AI, you're not going to have access to the world of information that you should be exploring, depending on what you're doing. Okay, in other cases, well, it might be that some results from AI could be helpful for you, but be very careful. Okay, let me go back to our presentation. I know I was sharing with you all those all those little data points. Don't feel overwhelmed. It's okay. There's no test. So let me take a moment real quick to here to share this with the group. Here we go. Okay. Yes, I posted the link to this presentation and it will be available for you, okay? Uh, so if you want to click on that and test that you can see it on your end, you should be able to see it without logging in. There's no need for that. Okay. So in regards to, ethical practices and what can you do with AI that it's okay, brainstorming, language development, you can research assistance. You saw me use it in a very specific way. I didn't go to ChatGPT and I did not go to Gemini. You can try in the elements, but if you do, when you do your prompt, you have to ask for sources, and do know that they're limited. And then you gotta triple check, because ChatGPT and Gemini give false sources. I've seen it. So in that regards, I'd rather stay a little bit more with sources that I know that I am retrieving for actual good places. You can also ask GPTs to, revise different drafts, organize and reorganize, text that you have placed, and then, engage in a reflection in which you really think about, well, how much do I know about this? What is my level of discernment? In the link that I gave you, there is a link to to the materials from our prompting workshop, just in case you're interested in, well, how do I prompt the GPTs? And also, one thing that I want to encourage you to do is, if you're using any of these tools, look to see if there's a study and learn mode, which many of them now have. For example, ChatGPT does have a study and learn, and I know Gemini has that too. So if you're trying to learn instead of just, produce content, that could be a good way of doing it. And then, at the end of it all, I really want you to understand that AI can actually enhance your learning experience, but it should not be a substitution for your own knowledge, your thoughts, and your creative work. Okay, it can be your best buddy, your collaborator, right? But you have to engage with curiosity and think independently, because what we're trying to do through our education is for you to ultimately develop knowledge, skills, aptitudes, and hopefully wisdom. Okay, but wisdom doesn't happen until further down the road. And who knows? Maybe it happens earlier, because everybody has their own process. Okay. So, you guys have any questions? Camila, I would say that all those are good, that they can be good practices, but not necessarily ethical, because, I mean, they can be ethical, but the the ethics comes from you, right? So you can brainstorm. Oh my goodness. I don't even want to I don't want to give you bad examples. So you can brainstorm for something that is not positive, and that, or something that is harmful for somebody, right? And that will not be an ethical practice. That's a no-no. So the issue whether something is positive or negative, or good or bad, ethical or unethical, is not on the thing outside of yourself, it is within you. So the practice of ethics is moral conduct. um so did that make sense? That's very important. Remember, the practical ethical behavior comes from us. It doesn't come from outside. And when, I don't want to say disobey, I want to use the word alignment. Okay. So let's say that Miss Jana gives me an instruction and I don't fall in alignment with her instruction because of some idea that I may have. Well, that could be a little bit unethical, right? Especially if Miss Jana is trying to achieve a goal and I don't get in alignment with that. So it has a lot to do with how is it in the context that you are. What are some ethical practices? And since this is coming up, I'm gonna do I have a recommendation for all of you. Each of you have a specific field that I think that perhaps you're gonna go work in, right? Um, it could be, if you don't mind dropping it on the chat, can you tell me what you're in school for? If you're here for nursing, accounting, librarianship, psychology. There we go. Psychology.
Architecture.
What else? Economics. Nursing. Okay. I'm gonna drop, let me see. Business. Okay. So, okay, I just dropped something for economics. Now I'm gonna do ethics for nursing. Let's talk about ethical business practices. Oh my God, when it comes to business, they do a lot of like sustainability practices. Okay. And I did nursing. Did I do psychology too? I didn't. Let me see.
It was
Medical.
psychology. Yeah. Architecture, lab tech, medical lab tech, and psychology are the
Okay.
other three.
Thank you. Oh my goodness, the ethics in psychology is fascinating because sometimes in the past some people behave they had really unethical behavior in
Mm.
psychology doing experiments with humans. You can't do that. Can't do that. So I put something there. It was terrible. Okay, and I'm missing medical assistant. Let me see.
Lab tech,
Lab
medical
tech.
lab technician,
Okay, thank you.
and architecture.
Oh, there's a code of ethics for medical laboratory professionals. Okay. And then the architecture, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. Did we get everybody? Their
I
code of
think
ethics?
so. And I
Woo!
just found what you say about ethical for like medical field, just even after World War II. Yes, the Nazis learned a lot, but there was a big debate on whether they should even use what the Nazis had learned because of the way they got their information.
Right. It's a big issue even to this day. So then, guys, what I did was I went and I started as fast as I can to get each and every one of you the code of ethics that is in alignment with your field of practice. Of course, you can go and read the other ones, but this is something that you should know. Every field has a code of ethics, and usually they come from the professional organizations, right? So, for example, if you want me to intersect an idea, check this out. If I'm going to think about the impact of artificial integrity, right, in the field of psychology, an unethical practice could be to see a psychologist uploading their notes of a meeting with a patient to have AI do the analysis. Unethical. Unethical. Okay? No, well, Phyllis, I'm not saying this to happen, but right, you gotta think. So read those because especially for everybody, like when you work with clients, like students in every field, you gotta protect your clients, you gotta protect their privacy, you gotta protect the integrity of the process, right? So anything that has to do with third parties and unloading data, and for every field there are going to be certain nuances as to ethical and unethical practices. Okay. So make sure you explore your field and you find out what to do and what not to do. For example, for me as a librarian, it is unethical to give medical or legal advice. If you have a call, I'm going to tell you, please go to the doctor. I cannot gonna be, oh my gosh, I read this book that has this remedy, and on page 85, you need to try this. That's not okay. See? So depending on what it is, there's nuances, okay? All right, it's now 2:01. Uh I want to appreciate your participation, your enthusiasm, the completion of the survey, and the way you have enriched this conversation with your own lived experience, right? And with that, I wish you a good day, great success.
Thank you all for coming. It's always great to see y'all. And we will see you next time. Bye, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye. Have a good one. Bye bye.